I was driving home from my friend's house late at night. I'm unsure of the exact time, but maybe it was around 2 or 3 a.m. My house is only 20 minutes away, which isn't far because houses here are spread out. It was raining, and there weren't any streetlights, so it was hard to see. I drove slowly and carefully. About 5 minutes later, I stopped at a traffic light. My light was red, but on the other side, a blue car was partly in the intersection. Its headlights were on, but it wasn't moving even with a green light. I wasn't sure if something was wrong or if the driver had fallen asleep. When my light turned green, I drove forward and carefully went around the car. I tried to peek inside as I passed, but the rain on my window made it hard to see anything. Just a moment after I passed the blue car and kept driving, it turned and started following me. So, it wasn't broken down after all. I watched it closely in my mirrors. I'm not usually paranoid, but something about this felt strange, like it was planned. A minute later, their headlights got brighter in my mirrors as they drove closer, almost right up to my back bumper. With the rain and the bad weather, it made me nervous. I looked at the road and noticed a small light on my dashboard. It was the warning for a low tire. That's normal, but it felt strange for it to happen now. I rechecked my mirrors, and the blue car was still behind me, so close that their bright headlights made it hard to see anything else. I was only 4 or 5 minutes from home, almost at my neighborhood entrance, when another light came on. This time, it said I had a flat tire. My stomach sank. As soon as I saw the flat tire signal, everything clicked. I was almost sure the car behind me had done something. I kept driving for another minute, trying to get closer to home, but my car felt like it was sinking on the left side. I was practically driving on the rims, so I had to pull over. The car behind me stopped too. I should have called someone right then, but I was too focused on watching the person behind me. Even if I had called, I don't think it would stop what happened next. Once I parked, 3 men got out of the car behind me. I only had a few seconds to think, but I felt completely helpless. They ran up to my car, 2 on my side and 1 on the other. One man came to my window, yelling at me to open the door and pointing a gun at me. Everything happened so fast, I was in shock. I started to reach for the door, but another man smashed the back window with something, breaking it. He reached in, unlocked the door, and opened it. They were all shouting at me and each other. The man in the back opened the other back door, then leaned forward to unlock my door too. I just sat there with my hands up, showing I wasn't a threat. I knew there was no way out, even if I had something to defend myself with. As soon as my door was open, the man with the gun yanked me out of the car and slammed me onto the ground. Strangely, while I lay there staring at the wet pavement, all I could think about was how cold and wet it felt, not about the gun pressed against the back of my head, or the fact that I was being robbed and beaten. I think my mind was trying to block out the scary reality of what was happening. I wasn't on the ground long before the men by my car yelled something, and the guy holding me down hit me in the back of the head. My head slammed against the pavement. I couldn't even tell if he used the gun or his fist because I felt so numb. Somehow, I didn't pass out. I heard their car doors slam shut, and then they drove away. Still dizzy, I rolled over and tried to get up. They had taken my phone, so I had no choice but to drive home and call the police from there. Driving on the rims damaged my car even more. The investigation didn't lead anywhere, except to find out the men had placed small tire spikes in the road at the intersection I crossed. I was lucky to only hit 1 spike, and the others didn't do as much damage. They probably planned to ambush me right after I hit the trap. In the end, it didn't matter. It worked anyway. I'm 24 years old, and I used to live by myself with my dog, Bear, in a nice little townhome until 3 months ago. I moved in when I was 22 because I had a good job. I liked the place, especially since it was the first home I rented on my own. But everything changed after one night, and the 2 years I spent there happily were ruined. It was dark and raining a lot outside. It was my day off, so I was sitting in my living room looking at my phone. It was 8 p.m. and just an hour before I usually went to bed. Bear had been sitting by the back door, staring outside. He started whining and came running to me, which meant he needed to go out. I got up, let him outside, and then closed the door. I stood in the kitchen for a moment. Even though it was just a townhome, there was a small fence between the backyards, so I didn't worry about Bear running away. I should also say that Bear isn't a big dog. He's small and fluffy, like a teddy bear. A few seconds, maybe 15 or 20 after I let him outside, I heard him whimper and bark. His bark sounded scared, like he was running away from something. It scared me, so I rushed to the door. I looked outside and saw Bear running back to me with his tail down. Once he was inside, I stuck my head outside and looked around the backyard, thinking maybe a coyote was near the fence, but there was nothing there. I made sure Bear was okay and locked the door. He never acts like that, so it made me worried. I let him sit on my lap for the rest of the night. For the next 30 minutes, he kept lifting his head and staring at different windows and doors. After about 45 minutes, Bear suddenly turned his head and stared at the window behind me. His ears went down, and he started growling. "There," I said, turning to look where Bear was staring. Right by the window, just a few feet away, was a man staring at me, his face almost pressed up against the glass. I jumped up and screamed, stepping back, and the man quickly ran down the side of the house. Bear started barking with all the noise. I hurried to close the blinds and check the other windows to make sure they were shut too. From the quick look I got, I didn't recognize the man. I had no idea who he was, or why he was there, or why he was staring at me. I tried to listen for any signs that the man was still nearby, but the rain outside was too loud to hear anything. Bear seemed calmer, so I stayed up a little longer just to be sure. Then I went upstairs and let Bear sleep in my room with me. It took me a long time to fall asleep because I couldn't stop thinking about what happened, but after about an hour, I finally drifted off. When I woke up, Bear was standing right by the bedroom door, staring at it. It was creepy to see that in the middle of the night. But just seconds later, I heard something downstairs, a man talking. Then, not long after, I heard another man on the other side of the house talking back. Their footsteps were really loud, and they weren't even trying to be quiet. It was like they didn't care if I knew they were inside my home. My bedroom door was locked, but I had nowhere else to go. I quietly went over to Bear, trying to keep him calm, then picked him up and moved to the corner of my room, behind the bed. It took me a moment, but then I realized something. I hadn't heard any noise for about a minute. No footsteps, no voices. That's when I took out my phone and called the police, whispering as quietly as I could. While I was giving them my address, Bear started growling softly, then began barking and whining as 2 sets of footsteps came up the stairs. I begged the operator to send someone right away. The 2 men started talking again, but their words were hard to understand. One of them said, "Hey, we just want to talk." "We're not here to hurt you." I screamed, telling them I had called the cops and to leave. I was panicking, not sure what else to do. There was a pause, and then one of them said, "We're here to help you." I didn't say anything back because I was too busy trying to stop myself from crying. "Open the door," one of them said. It got quiet again. I could only hear their breathing behind the door for what felt like a whole minute before one of them walked back down the stairs. I couldn't tell if they went downstairs or if they had left, but I only heard one set of footsteps leaving the bedroom door. It was so quiet, and I couldn't hear any more breathing. In the distance, I started to hear the soft sound of sirens getting louder. Finally, I began to feel a sense of safety returning. Once the sirens grew closer, I heard footsteps running out of the house downstairs. But I still wasn't sure where the other man was. It seemed unlikely he would still be by my door, but I could sworn I hadn't heard him leave. I waited for the police to arrive and start searching the house. I heard them moving downstairs, then slowly making their way upstairs and knocking on my door. I almost didn't want to open it, still feeling like the other man had to be nearby. But when I finally did, it was just an officer standing there. I quickly told the officer about my worries. He told me to leave the house while one of his partners kept searching, but they didn't find anyone. The only thing they found were wet footprints all around the house and an unlocked window, though I wasn't sure if I had locked it or not. It was terrifying, though feeling so sure that the other man was still there, never hearing him leave, but then finding no sign of him. It made it impossible to sleep at night, always feeling like someone was still in the house, watching me. I moved out 3 months ago. The stress of not knowing what happened was too much, especially since neither of the men was ever identified or arrested. There was no clear reason for what they did, which just adds to the list of questions I still have. Even now, living far away in a new apartment, I sometimes still feel like I'm not alone. I work at a small store on the corner of a shopping strip. It's like a smaller version of 7-Eleven. I used to work in the mornings, starting at 3 a.m. and finishing at 1 p.m. I chose these shifts because they were the quietest and had the least work. My job was mostly helping customers, stocking shelves, and taking out the trash, so I didn't have much to do. It was the middle of winter, but I live in a warmer place, so it mostly rains instead of snow. It was raining lightly, enough to keep most people inside. On mornings like this, I liked to lean against the front of the store and smoke to pass the time. I wasn't supposed to, but no one was around to stop me. There were about 8 or 9 other stores along the shopping strip, and they all opened at regular times, usually around 6 or 7 in the morning. One morning, I saw a car pull into the parking lot while I was outside smoking. I thought they were coming to the convenience store. I finished my cigarette, threw it away, and then went back inside. There wasn't much to do, so I was just waiting for the customer to come in and leave so I could go back to being bored. After a few minutes with no one coming in, I went around the corner to check outside. The car was still there, parked nearby, but the headlights were off, and it looked like no one was inside. It was still lightly raining outside, and all the other stores were still closed, so I was a little confused about where the person went. I looked around one more time, saw no one, then closed the door and went back inside. 30 more minutes passed with nothing happening, and I think I just stood behind the counter, zoning out. I checked the time and saw that I had only been at work for a little over an hour. I decided to check the trash cans around the store and take them to the dumpster out back. I walked around to each trash bin, putting the bags in the cart and replacing them with new ones. While I was doing this, I heard a soft clicking sound from outside. It sounded like something breaking or snapping, but with the rain hitting the roof and the sound being far away, I couldn't tell what it was or where it came from. When I heard it, I didn't think much of it. It just seemed like another random noise from the old buildings. Once I filled the cart with trash bags, I rolled it into the back room and unlocked the door that led to the dumpster. I sighed when I saw that the rain was coming down harder, of course, just when I needed to go outside. Still, I pushed the cart through the rain and over to the dumpster, which was right across from the door. After throwing all the trash in, I turned to head back inside, but I noticed something was out of place. The store next to mine had its door wedged open. I'd never seen anyone there before 6, so it made me curious. I went back inside to get out of the rain, then went to the front door to look at the other store's door. All the lights were off, and it looked locked up and empty, like it always was at this time. I thought about it for a few minutes, then decided I had nothing better to do and went back outside by the dumpster to walk up to the open door. All the lights were off, but the door seemed to lead into a small closet-like room, which had another door that probably went to the main storage area. I stepped inside, standing just inside the doorway so it wouldn't look like I was trying to sneak in. Once inside, I could hear someone moving around in the other room, walking and opening drawers. It sounded like they were making a mess, which made me even more curious. "Hey, is everything okay in there?" I called out, hoping to get a reassuring answer from someone in the neighboring store. The noises stopped. I waited a few seconds, then realized this wasn't normal and something was wrong. I quickly stepped back outside into the rain and headed back to my store. As I got closer, I noticed something was missing from the door I had just left. It took me a second to figure it out, but then I saw that the handle was gone. There was just an empty hole where the handle and lock should be. Then I looked down at the wedge holding the door open and saw that it was the broken door handle. I ran back into my store, locked all the doors, and called 911 and my store manager. Once I knew they were on their way, I went to the wall that connects our stores and pressed my ear against it, trying to listen to what was happening. Whoever it was must have known I called the police because they started moving faster, running around and knocking things over. After about 30 seconds to a minute of this, I saw lights flashing outside and heard sirens getting closer to the back of the building. The footsteps quickly moved to the back of the store, and then I heard a lot of loud yelling, which I figured was from the officers. After about a minute, I checked the back door and saw a less chaotic scene. I walked outside to talk to the officers, thanked them for coming so quickly, and gave them a statement. The man who was arrested had a pillowcase filled with nearly $6,000 worth of stolen items. He also had an empty gun and various tools for breaking doors and locks. I later found out he had also broken into this store 2 spots down. It's unclear if the man knew I was working at the time, but since my store lights were on, he probably didn't plan to break into my store. However, there were several large scratches on the back of our door handle, which might have been from a previous attempt.